Good afternoon, one and all. I welcome you all to Ganesh IAS Academy. In today's session, we'll be seeing environment-based current affairs from the date January 19th to 25th, 2024. Let us get into the news articles one by one. The first news that we are going to discuss is India dispatches Malathion to Afghanistan. So, why is India dispatching Malathion to Afghanistan? What is Malathion? And all these details we must have to understand. And how is it being dispatched? Let us get into the details. In its continued efforts to help Afghanistan, India has supplied 40,000 liters of Malathion. What is Malathion here? It is a pesticide, okay, which is used to fight locust menace. So at present, Afghanistan is facing a locust menace, and to fight that locust swarm, India has supplied 40,000 liters of this pesticide called as Malathion, okay, and it is done through Chabahar port. This is also important, okay. Chabahar port belongs to Iran, so it is done through the Chabahar port route, okay. So here the Taliban controlled Ministry of Agriculture in Afghanistan has expressed their gratitude for this assistance by India, and this is highlighting its significance in protecting crops and ensuring food security in Afghanistan. Obviously, when there is no locust menace, the food security is ensured, okay. So this is the significance behind this assistance given by India. And what is Malathion here and how is it different from other pesticides? This Malathion is known for its efficacy in arid region and minimal water usage regions, and is considered a crucial tool in locust control, okay. So even in arid regions and regions where there is minimal usage of water, this Malathion can be employed. That is what we need to understand here. What else do we have to know from this news article? That this assistance is not only going to help prevent the locust attack in Afghanistan, but also in other Central Asian countries like Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and it is effective on crops in the region, okay. So locusts, what are they? They are voracious in nature, which means they will spread fast and they cause a lot of menace. So they are voracious in nature and are known for their vegetation destroying abilities, and their large scale presence may potentially threaten the food security. Yes, they have this ability of destroying vegetation. That is why we need to control pest, this particular pest, locust. Recent locust attacks, that also we must have to know. So here the locust menace was at its worst in the neighboring Pakistan in the early 2020. So in the early 2020, during that COVID-19 times, this happened in Pakistan. So they were experiencing a dual burden. One is from the COVID and another is from the locust attack, okay. So locust menace what was at its worst in Pakistan, and by that time the country, the Pakistan, has declared national emergency, okay. They said that this attack is causing a national emergency. Next, while Pakistan was experiencing locust attack, even in India certain states experienced locust attack. So at the same time, India too witnessed a large scale of locust incursion in several states such as Rajasthan, Gujarat, and some parts of Punjab, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, and Maharashtra, okay. So this is what we need to know about this particular topic, that is Malathion, okay. So a question may be asked based on this topic, that what is Malathion, what is it used for, okay. The question, the options may be like this, okay: pesticide, preservative, and other such options, okay. I hope this topic is clear. The topic that we are going to discuss now is forest fires in the Himalayan region. Why is forest fire happening in Himalayan region and how often does this happen? All these things we need to understand. So forest fires in Himalayan region, There have been several instances of forest fire in Himalayan region, especially in the Himachal and Uttarakhand states. And this happens in winter because of lack of precipitation. We'll understand what are all the factors which is contributing to forest fires in the upcoming slides. But here, the most common factor is lack of precipitation, that is lack of rain. Next, as per the Forest Survey of India, there have been 2050 incidents of forest fire between 16th October 2023 to 16th January 2024. But the same the previous year, okay. So for the same period, the last year, the number was just 296, but this year it is 2050. So there is nearly 7 to 8 times increase in the number of forest fire from the previous year. Okay, why has this happened? That we need to know. For that, we will understand the factors behind the forest fire. Before understanding the factors which is causing forest fire, what is forest fire in first place? Let us understand that. Forest fire, also called as bush or vegetation fire, or sometimes it is also called as wildfire, and it can be described as any uncontrolled and non-prescribed combustion or burning of plants in a natural setting like forest, grassland, brushland and tundra. Okay, it might happen in any of these areas. It might be in forest, grasslands, brushland or tundra region, and it is uncontrolled and non-prescribed combustion or burning of plants in natural setting, and it consumes the natural fuel and spreads based on the environmental conditions. So the natural fuel there is the dry leaves that is present there, the dry condition that is present there. Okay, and then it is also based on certain environmental conditions like wind and topography. Based on the movement of wind and the topography of that forest or grassland, the spread of forest fire will be decided. And here there are 3 conditions that is needed for the forest fire to happen and spread. What are they? One is the fuel, the dry material that has to be there, and then oxygen supply. Sufficient oxygen supply has to be there because combustion has to take place, right? So oxygen supply has to be there, and then there must be a heat source, temperature increase must be there. So now we'll understand the factors which are causing or contributing to forest fires in Himalayan region specifically, not generally but specifically to Himalayan region. So the first reason is lack of snowfall and precipitation. Obviously Himalayan region are known for their snowfall, and there won't be much precipitation, but precipitation will thrive the forest in those areas. Okay, will help in thriving forest. So the absence of snowfall and rainfall in the winter months has left the region dry. So because of absence of rainfall or snowfall during the winter months in the Himalayan region, the region has become dry. So snowfall and precipitation are crucial for maintaining soil moisture and preventing the forest floor from becoming excessively dry. Okay, so only when the forest floor is becoming excessively dry, it serves as a reason for forest fire to happen. So another condition or the factor is the dry condition that is prevailing overall. So lack of moisture because of lack of snowfall and precipitation. So lack of moisture in the soil and vegetation creates favorable conditions for forest fires. And here see the fuel or the initiating materials, that is dry leaves combined with dry soil, acts as a potential fuel for fire. Okay, dry leaf and then the dry soil. Dry soil is because of lack of snowfall and precipitation. Dry leaf because of increase in temperature, which we'll understand in the next slide. Okay, so rising temperatures possibly linked to climate change contribute to drying of the forest. Yes, rising temperature, then only drying of leaves happen. Okay, so rising temperature possibly which is linked to climate change. So climate change is also a factor here which contribute to drying of forest. Higher temperatures increase the evaporation rate, further depleting soil moisture. So increase in temperature dries the leaves and also dries the soil. Okay, so this is how it is contributing to forest fire. What else? Human activities are also responsible. Certain human activities like carelessly discarding cigarettes or engaging in uncontrolled burning can trigger forest fires. Moreover, even if controlled burning is done by the forest department, at times this may also lead to forest fire, uncontrolled forest fire, okay, if it is not properly managed. So human activities are also responsible for forest fire. This is what we need to know here. And vulnerable tree species, there are certain vulnerable tree species which are prone to catch fire easily, okay. So the example here is chir pine, okay. So presence of fire prone and flammable tree species like chir pine increases the risk of forest fire, and about 15% of the Himachal's forest is covered with this chir pine, okay. And then long dry spell, this is also another reason. So extended periods without rainfall and snowfall over several months create long dry spell, thus making the region more susceptible to forest fires, okay. So this is what we need to understand from this particular topic, and this is the chir pine trees. This is how it looks, and they get dried very easily. They are highly prone to forest fires, okay. Chir pine. And then there are certain government initiatives taken for coping up with the forest fires. What are they? First is National Action Plan for Forest Fire. It was started in the year 2018 with the goal of reducing the forest fires by informing, enabling and empowering forest fringe communities. So here the focus is on the forest fringe communities and also incentivizing them to collaborate with the state forest department. So it is a national level action plan for forest fires, and the goal is to reduce forest fires. How are they going to reduce forest fire? By informing, enabling and empowering the fringe communities which are present in the forest. Okay, so this is what we need to know here. And then the second initiative is the Forest Fire Prevention and Management Scheme. Okay, it is the only government sponsored program dedicated to assisting states in dealing with forest fires. Okay, so this national level scheme will be assisting states which are facing forest fire. What is the scheme here? The Forest Fire Prevention and Management Scheme. Okay, so this is what we need to know from this particular topic, that is forest fire which happened in Himalayan region. Okay. The topic that we are going to discuss now is Wildlife Licensing Rules 2024. So what are these new rules? And this rule or these rules are in amendment to which previous rule, okay, that we need to know. Let us get into the details. So the central government recently introduced wildlife protection licensing additional matters for consideration rules 2024. This is the new rules, the entire name, okay. So this is going to amend the wildlife trade rules of 1983. This is very important, okay. A question may be based on this, that these new rules are amending which previous rules, that is wildlife trade rules, thus resulting in a significant changes in the licensing process and exclusion of certain species. Why are they excluding certain species, and what are all the species that are being excluded? All these details we must have to understand here. And here the amendments became operational on the 16th January 2024, making the first revision since 1983. Okay, so these wildlife trade rules were introduced in 1983, and this is the first time that these rules are being amended or revised. Okay, so let us understand the changes that has been made. Wildlife licensing rules 2024. So what are all the changes made to schedule 1? Okay, here briefly we'll understand that the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 was amended in 2022, and then here the 1972 act it had 6 schedules, okay, but then the 2022 rules had only, or the act had only 4 schedules. Okay, so you should not get confused what these schedules are. Okay, we'll understand what the schedules are and what are all included in the schedule in the upcoming slides. Here, what are all the changes that has been made to the rules of 2024? Let us understand. So the rules published in the year 1983, the previous one, it states that no such license shall be granted to trade in wild animal specified in Schedule 1 or Part 2 of the Schedule 2 to the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, the previous act, okay, except with the previous consultation of the central government. So, license can be given only with the previous consent of the central government. If not, no license is given to, license is given for trading animals which are specified in Schedule 1 and Part 2 of the Schedule 2. This was the previous rule. But how has this been changed now according to 2024 rules? That is, this condition has been changed into the new guideline, in the new guidelines, which says no such license shall be granted if it relates to any wild animal specified in Schedule 1 of the Act. So, here only the Schedule 1 part is taken in the new rules, whereas the Part 2 of the Schedule 2 has been left. So, this is the exclusion that they have made. Again, except with the previous consultation of the central government. So, the consultation from the central government clause is still there, but then they have just excluded the Part 2 of the Schedule 2, which is covered in the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. Okay, but there is a change in that too in the new act which I mentioned, which was amended in the year 2022. Let us understand all that. So, this means, the new rules means that the restrictions on Schedule 1 species, which include animals requiring utmost protection. So, Schedule 1 species require utmost protection. Example, tiger, elephant, rhinos, etc. They are still in place. Okay, this restriction on the trade of animals which require utmost protection is still there, but with a provision of consultation. This is continuing. Okay, next. Schedule 2, already we discussed this, again we are going to explain it here, that the significant change in the new guidelines is the removal of licensing restriction for the species listed in Schedule 2 of the Wildlife Protection Act, which we saw in the previous slide itself. So, this implies that the license for trading in Schedule 2 species can be granted without any consultation, okay, without any consultation from the central government. Okay, so this is the new rule of 2024 now, or the approval from the central government which was required earlier according to 1983 rules. Okay, but now it is amended. So, the factors considered in licensing. So, this new rule of 2024 is saying that you must have to consider certain factors before according a license to, license for trade in animals. Okay, so the new rules also specify the factors that the authorized officer, he is the one who is going to give the license, right? So, the authorized officer must consider while granting license. What are all the factors? First is the capacity of the applicant. Next is the source and the manner of obtaining the supplies. Here the supplies is the animals here, okay? And then the number of existing license in that area in which the license being given to yet another new applicant, okay? And then the implications on hunting and trade of the concerned wild animals. All these factors are to be considered by the authorized officer before giving a license for trade in animals. So, this is what we need to know here. So, here we have to understand what is the status of wildlife trade in India, and then we'll get into the details of what are all the features of Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 and what are all the changes that has been made in the 2022 Act. Okay, so India is a biodiverse country. We are very well aware of it, and India has nearly 6.5% of the world's known wildlife, and approximately 7.6% of the world's mammals and 12.6% of the world's birds are present in India. Okay, so the illicit demand at the global level for wildlife and its products has seen rise in wildlife crime across Indian subcontinent. Okay, so wildlife crime is happening because of the illicit demand at the global level for wildlife and its parts. So what are all the kind of parts that is being, that is in demand? Let us understand. So in India, wildlife trade includes diverse products, including mongoose hair, which is used for painting brush, okay, and then snake skin, rhino horn, tiger and leopard claws, bones, skin, whiskers, and elephant's tusks, okay, ivory making, okay, and then deer antlers, turtle shell, medicinal plants, timber and caged birds such as parakeets, mynas, munias, etc. Okay, so these are all the species of animals that are being threatened for their body parts, okay, in trade. Now we'll understand the Wildlife Protection Act, and here a large part of this trade is meant for international market. This is also important point to be considered, that a large part of the trade that is happening in India is meant for international market and it has no direct demand in India. Okay, so the demand is from the outside. And India is one of the top 20 countries for wildlife trafficking and one of the top 10 countries for wildlife trafficking by air. This is also an important point to be known. Next, the World Wildlife Report 2020 by United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime found that between 1999 and 2018, 6,000 different species of flora and fauna were seized globally. So this is a fact which you can include in your answer writing. Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. So this 1972 Act provides a legal framework for protection of various species of wild animals and plants, management of their habitats, regulation and control of trade in wild animals, plants and products. So this part is what we are focusing now. Control of trade in wild animals, plants and products made from them. That is also under the ambit of Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. Okay. So the act also lists schedules of plants and animals that are offered varying degree of protection and monitoring by the government. We saw, right, Schedule 1 and Schedule 2. Like that, we have different schedules. In 1972 Act, there were 6 schedules, but now we have only 4 schedules. What are the 4 schedules? Let us understand that. And this point is also important, that after the enactment of Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act of 2019, this Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 was made applicable. Okay, it became applicable to the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, because previously when Jammu and Kashmir was a state, okay, before August 2019, this Wildlife Protection Act was not applicable to Jammu and Kashmir state, but after this Reorganization Act, it was made applicable to the 2 union territories, that is Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh also. Okay, so this Amendment Act of 2022, what were the amendments made? So the number of schedules has been reduced to 4 from the earlier 6, which we already saw. So here the Schedule 1 contains animal species enjoying highest level of protection. So according to 2024, the trade rules, okay, license rules, these are the species to which restriction is there for trade. Okay, next is Schedule 2 for animal species subject to a lesser degree of protection. This has been excluded in the trade rules, okay, the licensing rules. Next is Schedule 3 for protected plant species and Schedule 4 for scheduled specimen under CITES. What is CITES here? It is a convention on international trade in endangered species of wild flora and fauna. Okay, so under this CITES, what are all the animals or the species covered, then they will be placed in Schedule 4. Okay, so this is what we need to know from this particular topic. The topic that we are going to discuss now is new species of Silverline butterfly has been found. Okay, so where was this found? Let us understand. Researchers from the National Center for Biological Sciences in Bengaluru in collaboration with Indian Foundation for Butterflies Trust, have identified new species of silverline butterfly in India's Western Ghats area, which is a biodiversity hotspot. Okay, so this unique species was named Sigaritis conjuncta, or it is also called conjoined silverline. Okay, Sigaritis conjuncta or conjoined silverline is the name of this butterfly, and it was first spotted in 2008 but became it came under extensive research in 2021 only, and then the team of researchers initially encountered and photographed this butterfly in 2008 during a field trip in Iruppu Falls in Brahmagiri Wildlife Sanctuary. So whenever we study some species, then we must have to associate it with the habitat, with its habitat. Okay, so here it is the Brahmagiri Wildlife Sanctuary where this bird species, this butterfly species was found. Okay, so this is how it looks, Sigaritis conjuncta. Okay, so although the conjoined silverline appears similar to other silverline butterflies, there are other silverline butterflies. Okay, so they are appearing similar to other silverline butterflies from a distance, but a closer examination reveals distinct wing patterns that separate it from other butterfly species. Okay, that set it apart. So this unique characteristic consisting of fused bands on the underside of the wings led to the species being called as conjoined silverline. Okay, so such fused bands on the underside of the wings is seen. This is very distinctive to this particular butterfly, that is conjoined silverline, also called as Sigaritis conjuncta. So here we saw that it was found in the Brahmagiri Wildlife Sanctuary. So we need to know a little detail about Brahmagiri Wildlife Sanctuary. So it is situated in the southern part of the Kodagu district in Karnataka, and it is named after its highest peak, that is Brahmagiri Hill. And this sanctuary is the origin point of the river Lakshman Tirtha, which is a significant tributary of Kaveri River. Okay, it joins Kaveri in the state of Karnataka, and it encompasses semi-evergreen to wet evergreen forest, high altitude grasslands and shoal forest, and then abundance of wildlife with notable species such as tigers, elephants and Indian gaur being commonly found here. Okay, so this is what we need to understand about this topic, that is new species of silver line butterfly, and it was found in Brahmagiri Wildlife Sanctuary. So we saw details of this sanctuary also. Okay, the topic that we are going to discuss now is third national communication. So what is this national communication? It comes under which convention? All these details we must have to understand here. Let us get into the news article. Recently, India submitted its third national communication and initial adaptation communication to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. Okay. So, what is national communication here? It is a report prepared by the parties. Parties here are the countries, the nations. The parties to this convention, UNFCCC convention. So, it is a report prepared by the parties in line with the articles 4 and 12 of this convention, and it includes, the national communication here, it includes an inventory of anthropogenic greenhouse gas emission of the country by sources and also removals by sinks. All these details will be there. Okay, inventory will be there, and then materials relevant for calculation of global emission trends, it will be there, and then any information pertaining to the steps taken by the country for implementing the convention will also be included in the national communication, and this is the third national communication that India is submitting. Okay, it is like a report. So now let us get into the findings of the report or the details of the report. So India's net national emission in 2019 stood at 2.6 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, thus marking 4.56% increase from 2016 level and 115% increase since 1994 levels according to this third national communication. Okay, so here the carbon dioxide continues to remain the most emitted greenhouse gas, comprising 79% of the total emissions in the year 2019. Okay, so carbon dioxide contributes the highest number here. Okay, so increased burning of fossil fuel. What are all the other reasons for greenhouse gas emission? One is increased burning of fossil fuel, methane emissions from livestock, and increasing aluminum and cement production. These are also attributed for increase in greenhouse gases. Okay, now specifically we'll understand it sector wise. See here, sectoral contribution. India's greenhouse gas inventory 2019 sectoral contribution. So if you see here, the energy sector contributes 75.80%, nearly 3/4. And then the industrial processes, it includes 8.43. It contributes to 8.43%. Agriculture contributes to 13.44%, and waste management contributes to 2.33%. So this is what we need to know here. Sectoral classification. Let us get into further more details of the sectoral contribution. So energy, the biggest emitter. We saw that the energy sector is contributing nearly 75%. Okay. So energy sector has remained the highest contributor in India for over 2 decades now, which is accounting for 3/4 of the total greenhouse gas emission in 2019. And then the emissions from the burning of fossil fuels for power generation make the bulk of these emissions, with 2019 seeing a 10% rise since 2016. Okay, so according to the Central Electricity Authority, the total installed capacity of the fossil based plants in India in 2023 was 237 gigawatts, comprising about 57% of the total power capacity of the country. Okay, so of the total power capacity of the country, 57% is coming from the fossil based power plants. Okay, so as part of India's updated climate commitments, the share of the non-fossil capacity should be at least 50% by the year 2030. Okay, so but then we are heavily dependent on fossil based power plants here, so we have to reduce it as much as possible by the year 2030. So the submissions in this report also noted that India's per capita energy consumption in 2021-22 stood at about 24.45 gigajoules, which is significantly lower than that of the world average, which is 75.6 gigajoule for the same period, that is 2021-22. Okay, so India is consuming very less per head, or per capita consumption in India is very less. Okay, per capita consumption of energy here. Next is industrial processes and product use, the second category. Okay, the second major contributor here. So the second most prominent culprit was the industrial processes and product use segment or sector, and this is mainly due to increase in production of cement, aluminum and lime. So because of these three components, or the production of these three components, there is substantial increase in greenhouse gases. And then here this point is also important, that cement production is considered as hard to abate sector in addressing climate change. Why is it hard to abate? That is because cement production is very important, but cement manufacture also includes emission of lot of carbon dioxide, so it is inevitable. Next is agriculture. What is the share of agriculture, and what are all the reasons because of which agriculture is contributing a lot of greenhouse gases? So agriculture activities primarily contributing to greenhouse emissions are animal husbandry and crop production. So animal husbandry is also one major contributor here. and obviously crop production, which releases carbon dioxide and methane at some places. Okay, so the major greenhouse gas emission sources in the agriculture sector includes methane that is produced by livestock, that is enteric fermentation that is happening within the livestock's abdomen, okay, in the stomach of the livestock, and also rice cultivation. It also leads to methane production. Moreover, there is also another greenhouse gas, that is nitrous oxide, which is emitted from the manure management and agriculture soil. Okay, even from agriculture soil, nitrous oxide is removed. Okay, is being emitted. N2O, and this is methane, CH4. Next is waste management. How is waste management contributing to greenhouse gas emissions? So greenhouse gas emissions from the waste sector accounted for 2.34% in 2019, stemming from microbiological process occurring in organic waste under anaerobic degradation, as well as anaerobic treatment of domestic and industrial waste water. So during this anaerobic degradation process, more carbon dioxide is being emitted. Okay, so emissions from the waste dipped by 2.7% since 2016. It has dipped. Nevertheless, waste management remains a challenge in India due to rapid urbanization. Okay, so because of rapid urbanization that is happening in India, waste management is being a big problem, and then waste management is also contributing to 2.3% of the total greenhouse gas emissions according to 2019 data that we have. Okay, so this is what we need to know from this particular topic. Okay, so with this we have come to end of today's session. I hope you found the session to be very useful and informative. Let us see in the next session. Thank you all.